It's finally upon us. The Endgame. The thing 11 years worth of movies have been building to. It all comes to a conclusion now. And yes, I know I said that same thing last year when Infinity War came out, but the Russo brothers told me there was not going to be a sequel, and I was dumb enough to believe them. Darn it, Russo brothers, I trusted you on this. Now last year for Infinity War, we ranked all the Marvel Cinematic Universe films from the worst to the best, so today we are going to celebrate Endgame by counting down our top 10 favorite moments from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now for this list, we only have one rule in place, which is that we're only allowing one moment per movie, because believe me, if we didn't put that rule in place, this entire list would be probably about the same 3 or 4 movies over and over again. Now, these are of course just our opinions. Let us know yours in the comments down below. But let's begin with number 10, the Barrel of Monkeys scene from Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 is a movie about Tony Stark losing repeatedly. His house is destroyed, his girlfriend is kidnapped, his friend is hospitalized, he even loses his suit. But throughout this film, he realizes if he's nothing without the suit, then he shouldn't have it. Which kind of also explains his entire character portrayal in Spider-Man Homecoming, because that's just good character development, everyone. So he struggles and fights his way to the Mandarin, only for this mysterious villain to constantly trick him and string him along at every turn. Even when he thinks that he's got this guy in his sights, nope, it was a fake. The real Mandarin was a totally different character the entire time. But after a whole movie of getting everything taken away from him, Iron Man has to rescue an entire plane full of passengers falling to their death. This was the moment he needed a win more than ever, and yet every odd was stacked against him. The moment when Jarvis tells him that it's physically impossible for him to catch everyone that is falling to their death, my heart leapt into my throat. And to make matters worse, throughout this entire film, Tony had been suffering from panic attacks. He was having flashbacks of falling to his death at the end of Avengers. Anything at all could cause him to relive that nightmare. That nightmare of falling out of the sky. And now he had 20 people falling out of the sky he had to rescue. And yet Tony charged right in, not even stopping to think about himself, because all he could think about was saving these people. To me, this moment encapsulates what makes Iron Man who he is more than any other scene in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even when everything has fallen apart around him, his first and only thought is saving lives, and he's going to think of a way to do it no matter how many odds are stacked against him. Number 9, Dance Off from Guardians of the Galaxy. Man, it was hard picking the best moment from the first Guardians of the Galaxy. There's so many that make you laugh, make you feel, make you love these characters. Seriously, the We Are Groot scene is brilliant for how much it says with so little. But there are a lot of moments from the other Marvel films that can get those emotions out of me, but there's no other moment in the entire MCU quite like how they conclude this big epic struggle. After a huge blowout fight scene, watching ships exploding and lasers flying and heroes sacrificing, we see that the villain Ronan still has the power gem. How will our heroes be able to stop him when all he has to do is slam his hammer into the ground and he will destroy this entire planet?
Dance off, bro. Me and you.
Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw that coming. And yet, it's brilliant. After an entire movie of getting to know Peter Quill, that is exactly what he would think of in that moment. And the film spent its time setting up this amazing soundtrack, even making it a prop in the film, only to bring that back and reveal, yeah, that wasn't a joke, it's actually how we're going to save the day. It's been here the entire time. This one joke brings back so much from this film at the exact right moment to serve as the perfect distraction that left not only the villain, but the entire audience wondering,
Put it together.
What are you doing?
which absolutely captures the unique genius of this film. Number 8, the battle for Asgard from Thor Ragnarok. Similar to Iron Man 3, Thor Ragnarok was an entire film about Thor losing, about him being beaten down and having everything taken away from him, including his own history. He learned that not only did he have a long-lost sister in Hela, but that the entire reason why Asgard existed was because Hela and his father had spent countless years enslaving and killing so many people in order to make that kingdom come about, and Thor has to realize that the only way to truly escape the sins of the past is to burn it all down, and wow, how do people out there still not get how deep this movie is? Like, seriously, I do not understand how it keeps going over people's heads. Was it because the Hulk is in here? Like, did he distract you from the giant, massive message of this movie? I don't know, that's a whole other argument. But again, just like the barrel of monkey scene in Iron Man 3, he needed that moment where he won. And here he got it. But it wasn't just him, it was all these heroes. You've got Valkyrie straying out there to face Hela being announced by her own fireworks show, Bruce letting the Hulk take control as this unlikely hero was now a true friend to Thor and his allies, Loki actually doing the right thing for once, Thor realizing that he didn't need the hammer and the power was inside of him the whole time, and the Executioner, who had been acting like a tough guy while cowering behind Hela as she destroyed his home, finally stepping up to make a truly badass sacrifice to save the people he had been ignoring. And all of this happened while the Immigrant song was playing in the background, and it matched up so well it might as well be Thor's new official theme song. Speaking of battles, many people have criticized the MCU films for all ending with big spectacular explosions and superheroes flying around. A critique I always found weird since half these movies star superheroes with flying powers, but I can understand so many movies ending with more explosions than an Old Spice commercial can get dull, which is why our number 7 moment is one of the most brilliant conclusions to any Marvel film. Dormammu, I've come to bargain from Doctor Strange. At the end of Doctor Strange, he was facing off against a god, someone well outside of his power level, and he defeated him by using his time manipulation powers to trap Dormammu in a loop. Now, as I said, this gets a lot of points because it was such a clever finale when so many of the other Marvel films just end with giant big explosions and fistfights. But like many of the best moments in the MCU, it speaks to who Doctor Strange is. He beat Dormammu by using his mind and a lifetime of self-sacrifice. Remember, in order for this to work, he had to die over and over again as Dormammu kept torturing him in every single time loop. So even though this might not have looked like a huge battle, it was actually a clash of wills. Could Doctor Strange suffer death millions of times over before Dormammu went mad? And the answer was yes, he could. He was the Sorcerer Supreme because this mere man proved to have more willpower than a god. Number 6, Yondu's rescue in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. The entire point of the Guardians films is it's a group of outcasts looking for a family and finding it amongst themselves, and nothing sums that up more than Guardians 2 when Peter meets his biological father, the living planet Ego. Peter thinks he's finally found that thing that he was always looking for, only to learn that Ego was the one responsible for his mother's death, and he was now trying to kill his friends. He didn't even have to stop and think about where his alliances stood, as he did what he had to do to fight off Ego and put an end to him once and for all. As he stood there in the crumbling remains of this world with no way out, suddenly, out of nowhere, Yondu, the rogue scavenger who raised him since he was a boy, flew in, rescued him, and said,
"He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy."
This one moment sums up the entire tone of the Guardians films. The message that your family isn't the people you share blood with, it's the people who are there for you. Number 5 from Winter Soldier, S.H.I.E.L.D. was HYDRA the entire time. Comic book fans went into Winter Soldier not really expecting to be surprised. We already knew the big reveal of who the Winter Soldier was. Little did we know, there was an even bigger surprise just sitting in this movie's back pocket. Halfway through the film, as Cap and Widow hunt down the mystery of who the Winter Soldier is, they make their way to the old base that Cap trained in over 60 years ago. There, they uncovered the true history of S.H.I.E.L.D. They learned that after World War II, members of HYDRA infiltrated the world's greatest peacekeeping task force, and throughout the years, they fully overtook it. This completely changed so much about the MCU. Cap's big sacrifice to stop HYDRA at the end of First Avenger? In the end, it didn't really mean anything. They still won. They overtook the entire world. the secret group of good guys who brought together the Avengers? Actually, they were a group of supervillains. This is one of the biggest leg sweeps in any of these films, and it makes you look back at all these big moments from the previous movies in a completely different light. Number 4, Nick Fury's reveal from Iron Man. These days, the idea of a shared cinematic universe and post-credit stingers are commonplace, but 11 years ago, that was unheard of. There is a whole generation of moviegoers coming up now who don't remember what it was like to not have stingers teasing future films and connecting to other movies. But when Iron Man 1 came out, that's how it was. Every single superhero movie had to exist in its own little universe, and you couldn't plan anything out for a larger universe other than ideas for a sequel. But that all changed after the credits rolled for Iron Man, and we were treated to one final scene of Tony coming home and being greeted by a shadowy figure who stepped out to reveal a man and a line that would change movies forever. I remember when I saw Iron Man in theaters, the moment that they mentioned S.H.I.E.L.D., I thought, oh, that's so cool. S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to finally be in a movie. And boy, did I totally underestimate how far they were going to go with that. I remember me and my friends being in a totally empty theater because back in those days, the moment the credits started rolling, no one in their right mind would stick around to just watch what came afterwards. But we were sitting there just talking about the movie that we just watched, just sharing our opinions about, and then all of a sudden, that scene started up, and we heard the unmistakable voice of Samuel L. Jackson, who, as a big comic book fan, I knew they had redesigned Nick Fury to resemble, so I instantly knew where that was going, and yet I had no idea what was coming next. The second that he mentioned the Avengers, a concept I thought we would never ever see in a movie, let alone in the hugely successful and fleshed out way that it has been, I thought it was a dream. I mean that literally. The next day after we saw that movie, I had to call up my friends and say, that actually happened, right? I didn't just make that up in my head because I thought it would be cool. They actually mentioned the Avengers, right? And all these years later, looking back at that moment, I'm still in awe of how much it changed movie history. Number 3, the final fight between Tony and Steve in Civil War. Throughout this film, Iron Man and Captain America found themselves at odds over the Sokovia Accord and what to do with the Winter Soldier, but towards the end of the movie, it looked like they actually agreed to put their differences aside and work to stop the villainous Zemo. It looked like there was hope for them after all. It looked like they could still remain allies as they worked together as heroes. However, throughout this film, they had been mentioning Tony's parents' death to make sure that was in the viewer's mind. And they kept reminding the audience that Bucky had been used as a mind-controlled weapon for decades to be the world's greatest assassin. And these two stories came to a head when they found Zemo, and all he did was play a tape for them. Tony looked at the security camera footage and said one simple line.
I know that road.
As soon as he said that, my jaw dropped as I realized what it meant. Bucky had been the one to kill Tony's parents, and Steve had been protecting him even though he knew this. At this point, Tony engages in one of the best choreographed battles in any of these movies, and what makes this battle so impactful is that you know it's not going to work out. You know this isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't a difference of opinions. This isn't something they can just talk about. Steve isn't going to reveal that their moms have the same name and now they're friends. No matter what Steve is going to say, Bucky killed Tony's mom, and now he has to pay. This was one of the most dramatic battles in superhero movie history in every single frame from setup to execution. Number 2, Thanos wins from Infinity War. I probably don't have to go into details on this because I'm sure this one is still fresh in everyone's minds, partly because the sequel for it is coming out this weekend, and partly because it was one of the most traumatic things I've ever seen in a movie. The Marvel movies spent a decade, making you get to know these characters, caring about their relationships, cheering on their adventures, making them some of your favorite movie heroes. Then, over the course of one movie, we watched as Thanos just ripped all of that down, tearing through the locations and characters we had come to know and love, but we still held out hope. I mean, it's Marvel. They're the upbeat fun guys. And the Russo brothers told us that there wasn't going to be a sequel. Yeah, I already told you how that worked out. And there were so many moments where they set up opportunities for Thanos to be defeated. So many times that you thought, yes, the good guys can win this. Even after he got all the gems, I thought there was a chance. But then he delivers that finger snap and he's just gone. And I just found myself sitting there thinking, no. They can't actually do this, right? Only to watch so many of our beloved heroes fading away. It was hands down the most heartbreaking moment in this franchise, as Marvel revealed, yeah, we spent a decade making you love these characters, so that we could then take that love and use it to break you in two. It was like watching a punch that had been winding up for 10 years finally being delivered. It's been almost a year since I saw that film, and I still can't think about Spidey telling Iron Man, I don't feel so good, without getting a lump in my throat. But there is one more spot on this list, and we can't go out on a downer like that. That's why our number one Marvel Cinematic Universe moment is the Battle for New York from Avengers. I will be the first to admit that I love the first Avengers film way more than your average MCU fan, but it's because to me, this marked a turning point for superhero movies. As I mentioned earlier, the idea of a shared cinematic universe where movies existed together like comic books and you told a continuous story all building up over the course of multiple individual movies starring completely different characters was unheard of. Hell, just saying it out loud now still sounds kind of crazy. But that wasn't the only crazy thing about the first Avengers film. Because you see, when that movie came out, it was happening at a time when superhero movies were going the dark, gritty, real-world route. You had superhero movies purposely trying to play down the more animated and colorful aspects of the comics. Or you had films like the Dark Knight trilogy that really leaned into these darker tones. And I'm not saying those films were bad. Many of them, such as the aforementioned Dark Knight, were brilliant. But they also made all of Hollywood think that's what we should do with all superhero properties. But here you had a studio that was trying to do a structure with these characters that had never been done before, in a tone that went directly against the current Hollywood zeitgeist. It was well known the number of people who said that this could never work or it would never happen. Hell, it's even part of the plot of the film. Remember that shadowy group of figures that Nick Fury had to report to who told him that the Avengers couldn't work and their brilliant plan for dealing with the aliens was just to destroy the city? Something that we would actually see years later in other dark real-world superhero movies. Yeah, that's not some shadowy government organization, that was Hollywood. But at the end of this movie, when the team is gathered together for that big 360 camera turn and the theme song starts blaring, it was this movie turning to the rest of Hollywood and saying, no, it can work. And we did it. From there, you are treated to just one moment after another that makes you want to stand up and cheer as you watch these heroes do what heroes do, all working together in a way that shows off each of their unique powers, but more importantly, their unique personalities, keeping what we loved about these characters intact from their own individual films and making us understand how amazing it is to see them all together. I've heard people compare this whole sequence to a big fireworks display. And you know something? Yeah, it was. And they earned it. This is my number one MCU moment because to me, this is the moment that said, this is why the Marvel Cinematic Universe works. Thanks for tuning in to our countdown. Let us know your favorite MCU moment down below and come back this weekend for our review and spoiler talk of Endgame. Make sure to click the subscribe button and ring the bell so that way you don't miss out on it, and follow us on Twitter @ProfessorThori to keep up to date with us. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time.